Hello and welcome to another episode of Café 21. I'm your host, Ross Crawford, and in the hot seat today, we have another very special guest. Our guest today is internationally recognized as a leading expert on the subject of growth and maturation in sport and exercise. A senior lecturer in sport and exercise science at the University of Bath. Welcome to the hot seat, Sean Cumming. How are you, Sean?
Thank you very much. Doing well, Ross. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course, no problem. So you know the drill, you've been briefed. It's 3 questions and 3 answers. Are you ready?
Yes, definitely.
Good stuff. So you'll be speaking at the conference in November, and we're very excited to have you there and to have you talk about all your research. So as a brief introduction, do you want to explain to the viewers and listeners what is the primary focus of your research?
Yeah, so my research focuses upon growth and maturation in children and how it influences athlete development and talent identification in sport. In sports, we typically group children by their age groups, and age groups make sense if we want to match children on experience, social, psychological development. But what doesn't always match is biological development. So children of the same age can vary substantially in their maturity, with some children maturing in advance or in delay of their peers. In fact, the difference between children of the same age can be anywhere up to 5 to 6 years in biological age. And this has big implications in terms of their performance, their selection, but also how we might treat them in terms of managing their training load and their training content to optimize their development.
Fantastic. Sounds like a really exciting adventure. You've put a lot of research into this, as we know. So you touched on it there, but how can your research benefit the development of young athletes in sports as a whole?
Yeah, so it benefits them in a number of ways. The children could do very little about the timing of maturity, whether they're early, on time or late, but there's a lot that we can do as coaches or sports scientists to take that into account and adjust training or adjust evaluations accordingly. Our research has helped identify in a number of sports that there are specific selection biases towards children who are early developing or late developing. In football and rugby, for example, there's strong selection biases towards early maturing boys, which start at around the ages of 11 and then increase as they go through the age groups. So if you happen to be a late developing boy in football, your chances of being selected are incredibly low. On the flip side, if we look at sports such as gymnastics, we often find the late developers being selected into those sports. So this whole idea of timing, which is largely under the control of genetics, will have a big implication in terms of performance and selection. It's helped us understand how early maturing boys benefit from being bigger, stronger, faster, and some of the mechanisms that underpin these kind of biases. Another particular benefit from our research is that we know now that when children enter certain phases of development, such as the adolescent growth spurt, that they're more at risk for injury, but also potential sort of decrements in performance, such as adolescent awkwardness. And of course, what our research has been doing has been trying to understand how we can better predict when children enter those phases of development, so we can adjust the training programs accordingly and increase the likelihood that they go through those sort of phases of development without injury and with limited impact upon their performance. And so it's been a lot of fun studying, and it's been really fun to work with the various sports clubs and organizations to start translating the research into practice.
No, that's actually leads on to the next question of the interview. So you've worked with a number of different organizations and leagues and clubs, as you mentioned, but so do you want to give us a few examples of research and work with the clubs and organizations you've conducted in growth and maturation of young athletes?
Yeah, certainly. So over the last couple of years, we've been working with a number of organisations, the Premier League, for example, the Lawn Tennis Association, British Gymnastics, and also individual clubs. We work very closely with Southampton Football Club, Bournemouth Football Club, and with Manchester United. And certainly with the Premier League and the Lawn Tennis Association, a big focus was setting up systems and policies across the clubs and academies to get more accurate measures of growth and maturation in young athletes. So we can better identify who is advanced and maybe benefiting from that, or who's maybe delayed in their maturity. And we can take those factors into account when we evaluate the players. So we can evaluate them not just for their age, but also for their biological age. And that helps us better identify strengths and weaknesses. In addition, with these organizations, we've worked with some of the companies that they work with in terms of monitoring young athletes and their development. We've been able to integrate our research and our methods for assessing biological maturity into their player monitoring systems, which allow them to better account for those differences, but also almost tick down the clock to that point of the growth spurt, so we can better identify and predict when that is occurring. And of course, the big benefit is that the coaches can now identify those players in the growth spurt. It doesn't just magically happen, and they can adapt their training programs accordingly. We're already seeing a lot of success in terms of reducing injuries through the clubs by better identifying the athletes in their growth spurt, but also reducing the burden. And of course, this is a great benefit for the health of the athletes, but also in terms of their long-term development, because the more time you're spent out injured with growth-related injuries, that's the less time you're playing, the less time you're competing. But we know that's very, very predictive of whether or not you're going to get contracted later on. So from a performance perspective, from a health and safety perspective, it's been really fun to work with those clubs and organizations and really raise the game in terms of the quality of work in those organizations. So it's been good fun.
No, it's brilliant. And what can we expect to hear from you at the conference? Have you got a little brief snippet of what we're going to hear at the conference in November?
Well, I'm certainly more than happy to give some insights in terms of the work that we've been doing in the various clubs and organizations, and how, working with the sports scientists at these clubs, we've been able to develop a range of different techniques and strategies to help optimize development, not just for early developers, but late developers as well. I'll probably give some insight in terms of some of the cutting edge work we've been doing on the subject of biobanding, which is something the Premier League has introduced, where every now and then we will actually have competitions where we group players by their biological ages and not just their chronological ages. So those early developers, they're getting pushed a wee bit harder than they would normally. And those late developers are getting more of an opportunity to take on leadership positions and flourish and shine, and some of the benefits we've been having there. And I'll also probably discuss some of the other exciting work we're looking to do in other areas, such as moving some of this sort of strategies and science into school systems and school sports, but also in terms of how we're looking to continue to develop these techniques, particularly working closely with technology companies.
Fantastic. And we're all very, very, very excited to hear that, all those insights on this particular subject at the conference in November. But for today, that's all we have time for, Sean. So thank you very much for sitting in the hot seat today. We look forward to meeting you in person at the conference and continuing our relationship with the University of Bath. So thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you.